Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I am Billy Galligan, and I want to start today by asking you a question. Have you ever had one of those split-second moments where your entire life pivots on a dime and you don't even realize it until years later? For me, that moment was St. Patrick's Day, 2001, in Savannah, Georgia. Picture this. The air is thick with the scent of southern pines and damp earth. The Spanish moss is hanging low over the oaks, and there is a literal sea of green moving down the street. I was there with the Irish Air Corps pipe band, marching in our saffron kilts, playing the drums. After our set, I was sitting on a bench near one of the squares, just trying to catch my breath with my drum resting beside me, when this American woman named Leanne walked up. She'd been drawn by the music, and she just sat down in the empty space beside me. We started talking, and honestly, it felt like we'd known each other for a lifetime. But then reality hit. Within days, I was back on a plane to Dublin, and she was living her life in Georgia. The ocean was in the way, so we did what anyone in the early 2000s did. We exchanged email addresses, and for 13 years, that tiny digital thread was our bridge. We sent emails, Christmas cards, birthday wishes, and eventually, we graduated to these long, late-night transatlantic phone calls. Then, in 2014, Leanne was reflecting on her upcoming 40th birthday, and she said, almost wistfully, Billy, I sometimes wonder, what if the ocean wasn't in the way? And without even thinking, I just said, then I will move. It was a mad thing to say, really. I was in my late 40s. I had a whole life in Dublin. My adult son, Robert, my aging father, John, a 23-year career in the Irish Defense Forces, and my loyal border collie, Lassie. But we decided to test the spark. I flew out to Georgia in February 2015. She took me to the Fox Theater to see Rent, we ate fondue, and she even threw a party where 33 of her closest friends interviewed me while I desperately tried to feed them my mam's traditional Irish stew. By the end of that trip, we knew the what if was gone. So we applied for the K-1 visa, and in July 2015, at about 2:30 in the morning my time, just as I was getting ready for a security shift at Dublin Airport, my phone pinged. The visa was approved. When Leanne came to visit Dublin a few weeks later, I planned a trip to the long room at Trinity College. Standing there under that massive barrel-vaulted ceiling, surrounded by centuries of ancient books and soft dusty light, I asked her to be my wife. But the joy of her yes came with a massive physical and emotional toll. Packing up a life in Inchicore, selling my things, and boarding a plane with Lassie in November 2015 was the hardest thing I've ever done. And the weight of that choice became painfully real in 2016 when my father John passed away. And because of strict immigration restrictions while my status was processing, I couldn't go back to Dublin for his funeral. That is a quiet scar I still carry, the hidden cost of starting over. So, how does a 50-something Irish military veteran end up driving bus 2538, what I affectionately call my yellow chariot of chaos, through the suburban streets of Gwinnett County, Georgia? Well, if you look closely, the road from Dublin to Peachtree Corners isn't as crooked as it seems. Before the Army, back in January 1985, when I was just 16, I started as a junior porter on the Irish Railways with CIE. I worked the Dublin to Westport line, and later the Dublin to Belfast line during the height of the Troubles. On those trains, you learned to read people instantly. You learned who was anxious, who needed help, and how to de-escalate tension with a quiet word or a change of subject when the atmosphere got tight. Then came my 23 years in the Defense Forces. I started in the artillery, but after breaking my femur in a soccer match on the parade ground, I ended up in the Air Corps and picked up a camera. I became a public relations photographer, which took me to places like Liberia in 2006, right after their brutal civil war, and Kosovo and Bosnia. In Sarajevo, I stood on streets where snipers had targeted people just trying to get water from the local brewery. I learned to look at the world through a lens, literally, focusing on the human elements, the quiet moments of resilience, rather than just the chaos. And let me tell you, keeping your cool while navigating a 40-foot school bus through a Friday afternoon traffic detour in Georgia, with a multi-car accident blocking your route and 50 high schoolers screaming behind you, requires the exact same diplomatic and observational skills I used in Kosovo. Just the other day, I had to squeeze the bus past a poorly parked delivery truck. A little girl in the middle of the bus looked up and asked, "Mr. Billy G, are we going to crash?" I caught her eye in the rearview mirror, gave her a warm smile, and said, "Not a chance, love. Your driver's got this." When we cleared it, the kids actually applauded. And the disputes? You get two lads in the back, red-faced and ready to swing over a missing soccer trading card. I don't shout. I just pull the bus over, walk down the aisle in my Atlanta United jersey, and stand between them. I ask quiet questions. We find the card tucked inside a textbook. They shake hands, and we move on. Or when a second grader realizes she left her lunchbox in the cafeteria and starts crying, you don't just ignore it. I call the school office right there from my phone, locate the box on Mrs. Davison's desk, and tell the wee lassie, "We'll get it sorted, love." It's about safety, sure, but it's also about getting them home with all their bits and pieces and their dignity intact. Now, when Leanne and I got married on December 20th, 2015, we figured we'd have time to adjust to married life. But then we got a call from the Department of Family and Children's Services. They had a newborn baby boy named Carter who needed a foster placement. But here was the catch. Carter had two older biological siblings, Kaylee and Calvin, who also needed to stay with him. We went from a quiet house for two to an instant family of five. We looked at each other, took a deep breath, and said our defining family phrase, "Sure, why not?" We officially finalized their adoption in April 2021. Today, Calvin is 14, refereeing soccer. Kaylee is 11, singing her heart out. And Carter is 6, absolutely obsessed with dinosaurs and Baby Yoda. But just as we were finding our rhythm, in late December 2024, our world faced an unexpected tremor. Leanne went in for her annual mammogram, and a few days before Christmas, the doctor called. They found something. Walking into the Northside Hospital Breast Care Center in January was terrifying. It brought back all those feelings of waiting on patrol in Kosovo, waiting for news during tough times. And then the doctor said those words. It is breast cancer. The air in the room just crystallized. That night, we sat at the kitchen table, tears spilling onto the unopened medical folders. But Leanne, with her incredible strength, looked at me and said, "We must tell the kids tonight." So we sat them down in the living room. We explained that some cells in Mum's body weren't behaving and she would need strong medicine and surgery to get better. Kaylee asked through her tears, "Are you going to die?" And Leanne held her tight and said, "No, sweetheart, that is not the plan." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of doctors, spreadsheets, and sheer exhaustion. But then we got the pathology report. It was grade 1, slow growing, and chemotherapy wasn't needed. The relief was so heavy it made me dizzy. However, because of extensive calcifications, Leanne decided to be thorough and opt for bilateral surgery to remove the tumor on the left and the concerning areas on the right. The surgery in mid-January 2025 went beautifully, but the recovery was a long road of managing pain, helping her dress, and keeping the household running. We couldn't have done it without our village. Our friend Trudy set up a meal train, and neighbors left casseroles on our porch like clockwork. Now, we're looking toward March and her 3 weeks of daily radiation therapy, but we also have our eyes on an April spring break trip to Tulum to celebrate her recovery and her milestone birthday. We've navigated the storm, and we did it the only way we know how, together. Looking back on the railway tracks of Ireland, the dusty roads of Liberia, and the winding streets of Gwinnett County, I realize that life rarely gives you a straight route, but maybe the detours aren't wrong turns at all. Maybe they're just the exact roads we were meant to take. Thanks for listening today, everyone. Keep your hands on the wheel, look after each other, and when life throws you a wild curveball, just tip your hat and say, "Sure, why not?" Safe home, everyone.